Our principal sir, Professor Pankaj Sodhi sir, to kindly welcome sir with the flower. I request Tariq sir to take over the session.
Thank you, Ramesh, both the introduction and winning with me today. Okay, good afternoon, guys. Right. Well, I think I was there when your inauguration session was going on. Did not get a look at the faces of people because I was sitting here and face the other way. So this is the first time I get to look at all of you. And it seems general enthusiasm levels have dipped a little bit from the day one. Has it been like, did you have a long session in the morning? Okay. It has that like taken a lot of energy out. No, nobody is there. Everybody is keeping their cards close to the chest. Okay. I understand that it's probably your what is it? Is it like your second year of orientation? Right? Because the inauguration program was like literally 2 days, right? And you are still settling into the rhythm of class and campus and all that. So what I wanted to address was something very open-ended. It does say industry interface out there, but I wanted to talk more about the first part, this concept of joining the dot backwards. I will give a special prize to anybody who can tell me where I have taken that reference about joining the dots backwards from. Anybody. I will obviously reveal this at the end of the session. You will know why or where I'm talking about this concept from, but anybody who says, just from me, a special prize.
Ashmi once was from joining the
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a great book. That's not where the reference is from, but I'm very impressed that you have presumably read the book or at least to know about it, which is great. But yes, this joining the dots concept will come a lot into our discussions today. Just to give you an idea of how do you manage or let's say combine or blend what you have to do inside the classroom with what you are expected to do outside the classroom, right? During the inauguration program, I think there was a lot of emphasis given. Pankaj definitely mentioned it. I think Sajid did, and pretty much all of the speakers talked about it, about how critical it is that learning, especially through courses like these, remains a multi-dimensional, right? It's not about just being able to come to class and fulfill bare minimum of things that we do in class, but it has to go beyond that. Now, what I would like to talk to you guys about today is how you can make that happen. Right? Because it's one thing to come and say that you have to do this, but you might also want to ask a follow-up question to that. The follow-up question is, oh great, you want us to do this, but how do we do this? Right? What are the things that we are expected to do? Also, I completely understand that all of you guys are individual people who are not the same. You may be enrolled for the same courses, you might be of a similar age or demographic, but you are not the same people. Right? That we all understand. All of us are individual people, individual personalities. Right? So, I'd also like to talk about how you do things that fit how your worldview is shaped, right? It's not necessarily going to be that I'm going to come here and say these are the 5 things you have to do. You will not see stuff like that on the slides. It's going to be more about approaches of what people do. Okay. So This is, which programs are you guys in, if I might ask, because I think there's maybe like a couple of sessions, so I need to know. You guys are all BCom. Everybody here is BCom? Any non-BCom? No, right? Okay. So, and presumably, some of you or quite a few of you would have taken some kind of commerce subjects, etc., in the school level as well, by which I mean high school, right? Show of hands, people who did it at the 10+2 kind of level, commerce subjects, you had some kind of commerce subjects or combination. Okay, yeah, that's a majority. So that's quite a few of you, right? So you have probably some rudimentary idea of what you are getting into. All of the others who did not, let's say, take commerce subjects, nothing to worry about. It's not like you can't crack BCom if you have not taken commerce at school. School is for relatively general education, things that specialized from college onwards, usually, you know that, right? So, it's not going to probably matter whether you did take commerce subjects or not. Maybe at the initial point, it might a little bit, but beyond that, it's not going to matter. You know, it's like getting in a plane, right? Even if it is your first ever flight, right? So at the initial stages, you might have to ask around a little bit as to, oh, what do I do? Like I get the airport, now where do I have to go? What is the next step? But once you are inside the plane and you have fastened your seatbelt, it's up to the flight to the pilot, right? Everybody's in the same plane. Yeah. So it's pretty much the same kind of an idea. Okay. So my objective today would be to maybe talk for about 40 minutes, maybe 45. Okay. And then let you guys, there's an activity towards the end, so hopefully I get you somebody to participate in that and to also ask questions, right? And I don't say ask questions just for the sake of it that we have a Q&A. No questions are off limits really, in terms of, broadly speaking, whatever is on your mind is something that you can ask me. I'm perfectly fine with answering as much as I can based on. And obviously, these questions will be about your experience here and your interface with the industry, right? Anybody here who has done any kind of, let's say, internship or maybe a part-time job or even a full-time job for that matter before this or alongside this? Somebody has done a job. Oh, you have. Okay, what did you do? I worked at You worked in a startup and what were you doing now? You were working as a okay, great. What's your name? Mayur. So Mayur here has a little bit of an idea of the inside of an office, which is great. For a lot of the rest of you, I'm guessing anybody else who's had any kind of experience like Mayur's? No? Okay. Not a problem. It obviously is not a requirement. But that's what we are trying to sort of also understand as we go along, right? Because for most of us sitting here right now, we know the concept of work or the idea of an office or a workplace and things like that. Even entrepreneurship for that matter. We know all of these things as concepts or ideas, which we may have read in a book, which we may have seen in a movie. I always like to joke with first year students that the only office that you have seen is like on TV or on a movie. Like you don't know the actual workplace, right? And obviously, TV and movie depictions of workplace, while having some similarities with reality, are not actual depictions, right? So that is why we need to understand the reality a little bit as well. So that will be our objective. So, and after that, please feel free to shoot any questions. We'll try to answer as many as I can. Okay, So let's begin with the general idea of learning, right? This is a great quote that I found somewhere and I wanted to ask you guys about. So it says, I believe that education is all about being excited about something. So which is why I asked you guys at the beginning that even if you have had like an hour and a half long session, even if it has been a taxing day, the most important ingredient to be able to enjoy your time here in class and outside of class is the first part, right? Being excited about something. It should excite you, right? All of you know Roger Federer. Heard of Roger Federer, right? One of the greatest tennis players of all time. Right? Has been asked in multiple interviews that what keeps him going. It's, win 20 Grand Slams, you are the richest or one of the richest athletes in history, have won more than like $1 billion in prize money, which is insane, right? And yet he keeps on going. So do you think that Federer, well, now he's obviously retired from competitive tennis for reasons of his issues with the knee. But he was asked, I think, recently in some interview, where he said if the knees are still cooperating, he'd still be actually playing. Now, here's a man who's, the other side of 40. Professional athletes don't usually play the other side of 40. And a man who's pretty much gotten everything he could possibly have, right? And yet, if you ask him, do you want to play in a competitive tennis tournament? If you are fit, he says yes. This is somebody who's played literally thousands of hours of tennis through his life, right? So, what do you think keeps Roger Federer going? Exactly that. He's excited to step on court every single time. Even after all these years, he started, I think, playing when he was about like 7 or 8 years old, when he was like seriously started playing. So it's definitely 3 decades plus that he's continuously played tennis, right? And yet, the prospect of playing tennis excites him. Right? He's played at the highest level, and yet you give him a tennis racket and a tennis ball and a court, and you try to go right there. And that's what ideally should well do, right? That's something that you find that is there to be excited about. I am not saying you have to be immediately excited and passionate about principles of accounting. It's a slightly hard job to do, right? But something that you have to be, something that is your time, right? Something that keeps you coming back to something. Right? It doesn't necessarily have to be just the specific subject. It could be the environment, it could be the interactions, it could be the faculty, it could be some of the course material, anything. Find something that gives you that excitement and enthusiasm. What I wanted to ask you secondly, and Dhanush mentioned about me doing quizzes, right? So I can't really put my quizmaster's hat away. So everything I do is somehow like becomes a quiz. So what I wanted to ask you guys was, whose quote is this? I gave you the quote, right? That learning becomes exciting if you are. So is it A, Jawaharlal Nehru? You all know who Jawaharlal Nehru is. Is it B, Maria Montessori? Montessori is? The education is to start at the Montessori school system. Right? Is it C, Rahul Dravid? Again, don't need to introduce Rahul Dravid here, I'm guessing. Or is it D, Steve Irwin? Steve Irwin is? Do you know who Steve Irwin is? Seen him on National Geographic and places like that. This guy who used to like go and handle the stingrays and all of these kind of animals out there. You've seen him with the crocodiles and so on. No, you haven't? How come you guys have never seen a video of Steve Irwin? I think you'll probably, if you see him, you'll recognize him, but you don't know him by name. Anyway, the question is, whose quote is the quote? Let's do a show of hands. How many of you think it's Jawaharlal Nehru? Okay, people voting for Jawaharlal Nehru. How many people think it is Maria Montessori? Okay, that's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 15, about 15 or 16 people. So, all right. How many people think it is Rahul Dravid? Quite a few people think it is Rahul Dravid. Dravid also has that similarity with Federer in the sense that maybe he's also still excited about cricket. And how many people think it is Steve Irwin? Quite a few people do, even though they do not know who Steve Irwin is. But I'm very happy that you are catching on to this game because it is Steve Irwin. So the idea behind why I chose the Steve Irwin quote, I could have chosen, and there are many quotes of Nehru to choose from, or other educationists to choose from, right? Was this point that it does not have to be something, learning does not have to be something confined within the classroom. I know it's a cliched thing to say, but also you have to see it in action. So Steve Irwin sadly passed away doing something that he loved, and it was an unfortunate incident where the stingray kind of actually stung him, and that's what caused his death. But his daughter, whose name is Bindi, she carries his legacy on, and the whole idea is that he was somebody who was unafraid to explore and learn, and that's what you will see. If for those of you who have been introduced to Steve Irwin the first time, I highly recommend going to YouTube or Google and just searching for a few videos of it, the fascinating videos of it. You guys know Bear Grylls, right? Yeah. So Steve Irwin is a more fun Bear Grylls. Nothing against Bear Grylls. I love him as much as well. But Steve Irwin is a more exciting, fun Bear Grylls. So yes, that's the key message that I kind of want to help you guys process, which is that how do we bring passion and excitement into everyday learning, right? And we have to do that, well, mainly because this has happened. So we no longer study in the same kind of world, primarily because what happened over the last 3 or 4 years. I'm referring obviously to the pandemic and how that introduced us, well, quite forcibly and quite shockingly for most of us, the concept of the flipped classroom, right? So because educational institutions had to be shut down, and suddenly, I'm guessing you guys had that experience through school, right? That suddenly you had to attend classes online. It must have been a very difficult experience for most of you. I'd be very surprised if somebody came and said, oh, I was like, totally comfortable and at ease with online. Nobody really was. We had to teach online and we were clueless, right? So I have complete empathy and sympathy for students who had to go through this because it was not an easy period of time at all. But the one good outcome of this is that it has brought out this whole idea of the flipped classroom. So what is this flipped classroom? Or how does it work? So the traditional classroom so this is how it works, right? What we tend to do is you are getting this online content, right? And you are using a lot of technology. So in the technology, in the sense that you're probably mostly using your smartphones, some are using your computers, right? And connecting via the internet. Technology also meant you had to learn how to use video conferencing solutions and things like that, right? I had not used a video conferencing thing like a Zoom call and things like these till, I don't know, middle of my career, I guess. So, but you had to kind of start from there, right? So you're obviously more adept at all of this. But the key aspect of the flipped classroom was that the idea of those things that you are tinkering around with at home prepares you for more complex thinking and work that you could do at school, right? And that you could do through all these. So all these labs and projects and things like that. Again, when we say labs and projects, people tend to associate all of these mostly with science. You know, going to the lab is something only science students do or engineering students do. But even with a discipline like commerce, it's the same. Because anywhere where you are doing, you are, let's say, tinkering around with something which is outside of your standard syllabus, or you are doing an experiential event where maybe you are going through a simulation, which you will at some point through your class, or you are discussing probably a case study. All of those things are lab experiences, right? Because you are getting some ingredients and you are getting to combine them in the way that you might want. There is no rules to that, right? So if somebody gives you a case study and asks that, okay, you guys have to try and solve this case study, there is no single solution to it, right? So what you do is you try to find out what you think are the correct solutions. You present them, you discuss them, and that's what the discussion with your peers, that is your classmates and the instructor or the teacher, is what brings out the learning, right? So one step ahead of that would be the concept of flipped learning. So you talk about the flipped classroom, but how is the learning happening, right? The flipped classroom is the process. That's how we tend to learn now. Some of it by choice and some of it forcibly done because COVID changed the way we looked at education, and then some of it has now changed permanently, right? That yes, you now get to attend classes back in person, but some of those things that we did which worked during the online classes have now been incorporated in the in-person classes also, right? Offline classes as we call them. So what's essentially being done, or the key aspect that I want to focus on is these two things, right? That how do you learn to do more complex thinking, or what I say real world thinking? So basically working with technology at your own pace, and that will be the theme in this discussion also in this entire session. And through that, you do things like understand and remember. Those are things we'll have to do anyway. If you're studying any subject, those are the basics, right? But beyond that, then you are also able to analyze, create, apply, evaluate. Those are the critical thinking skills that I'm talking about. Those are the skills that you should be looking at developing. That is why, if you are given a writing assignment, I would recommend you write that by yourself. It's very tempting to, Google the stuff or use like a ChatGPT or something to do it, right? It's very tempting to do so. But while doing that, you're not really learning anything. If there are 3 words that describe the whole experience of learning, it is that learning is messy. Not the Argentinian footballer, but MESSY. So learning is messy in the sense that unless you play around with things and fail about 5 times, you don't really get to know what the successful outcome is, or you don't really get to remember that. It's like learning any other skill, right? That if you don't fail early on in that skill, and I think in the inaugural program, Sujit was mentioning it, right? That wishing you all a lot of failures and things like that. And there's a reason he said that. Is because honestly, learning is messy. There are no neat lines in learning, which is why the first time you might be handed a case study or a problem, you might find yourself completely lost there, which is perfectly fine, right? That don't get overwhelmed or panicked by that, because you will eventually come to this point. I can only offer you my example. Pankaj used to be in my class, but I don't think we met on the first day of accounts class. Did we, Pankaj? We did not, no?
No, we didn't meet.
So the first day I met a very different set of people. I was late for accounting class, number one. So I was running behind the schedule by about 10 minutes or so. So I was really obviously worried and concerned. So I ran into class. This is during my MBA. I've never taken an accounting or commerce adjacent subject ever in my life. This is the first time. And this was supposed to be the first class, it's like the second day of MBA or something like that. And the class is being taken by a very well-known accounting prof. So I enter the class, I sit down, and I realized the class has obviously been going on for some time. I also did not realize that the class has been going on for long enough that the first thing that happens when I sit down is somebody thrusts a paper onto my hand saying, this is the assignment we are doing. Remember, we're 10 minutes into the class, 600 seconds, right? What is the assignment? Here are 30 items, arrange them in a trial balance. I've heard the word trial balance for the first time in my life. So I find an empty chair and sit down there. I'm trying to still figure, my brain is still processing what is going on, right? And on my right hand side, this guy, his name is Saurabh. Again, 4 words I have heard for the first time in my life. I said, look, man, I have no idea. Because, like, I don't even know what is going on here. Right? Turns out, because, I became good friends with Saurabh later, Saurabh is a CA. He's joined the MBA after having done his CA. So he's a qualified chartered accountant. The CA is asking me, who's never heard of accounting in his life, where should I put the goods inward? Honestly, even if you ask me right now, I have no idea where the goods inward goes. But there's a point that could have thrown me off of accounting for life, right? But what we did after that was, my point was that, all right, so now how do I catch up with all this? Because clearly the prof there assumes everybody knows quite a bit about accounts, which is why she started the class with an assignment, which is, pretty much a level 2 assignment of an accounts class, right? For a lot of you, anybody who's done a little bit of, like you said, commerce in school, you've done that. But for everybody else, it would be completely new, right? Was that then I started asking around people, finding out what could be textbooks that you could refer to, went and spoke to the prof, and then came down to the second part of it. That, okay, the first exercise was a spectacular failure. I could not even write one thing down, right? But I promised myself that, okay, the next exercises should not be. And that's how you learn step by step. And that is why I say that learning is a very messy process. Embrace the messiness. It's all right. Right? It's not a bad thing that sometimes when you try something for the first time, you are spectacularly bad at it. Right? Because it's how you get better. So you try it again, right? I know these are not earth-shattering or eye-opening conclusions, but it's helpful to be sometimes reminded of that. Right? So if there are just 3 words you want to take from the session, it would be these 3 words. That always keep at the back of your mind that learning is going to be a messy process, and the mess is part of the fun. It's like doing pottery, right? The potter's wheel where you make these pottery items, right? Would you be able to get it done without getting mud on your hands? There is absolutely no, right? You would have to get your hands dirty to be able to make a nice piece of pottery. It's much the same here, right? Well, without the mud. Thankfully, none of the accounts classes or finance classes involve any mud. Unless anybody in the faculty gets creative, which I do not know about. Okay, so that's the point, that your hierarchy of learning usually is this, right? And that's what we are attempting to do. So we start with remembering, which is the commonest thing most of us have done through school also, right? And hopefully that basis, remembering stuff helps us understand things, understand some basics, some links and so on. And then we work upwards, we get more sophisticated, more complicated. That is being able to apply these new ideas that you learn to situations that you might find, right? You know how to draw a trial balance. First, you learn it by somebody telling you. Then you are maybe given like a fresh set of information, you draw it from there. And then maybe you learn how actual companies which file balance sheets do the trial balancing process, right? And then maybe you get into a profession where you are doing it as a profession. So that's the whole point about the creating part of it. That's where you are actually creating it. So every time you are writing an assignment by yourself, doing a project by yourself, all of those fall into that creation category, right? I think Sujit mentioned about the content creation part, right? All of us are content creators now, whether we like it or not, right? And part of that is this. Content is not just what goes up, let's say, on a social media feed or something. Content is not necessarily just one form. It's not just video or audio. It could take many forms, and it will take many forms in this exercise or in your classes, right? So there are two guiding principles that I want you guys to focus on. One is in classes, by default, engage, right? So which means interact, ask questions, be curious, because without that, your learning will not get deeper, right? I could have avoided accounts class for the next week after my first experience in the first class, but that's not the route I chose, right? The route I chose was to go and then ask these people. For example, Saurabh, because he was sitting next to me, was the guy I asked about all of this. And I told him this story. I told him that I had no idea about all of this. So please tell me as if like I do not know any of this. Right? I went and spoke to the prof and I told her the same thing. That I have no idea. So would you recommend, what do I need to do to catch up? She's the one who recommended a textbook, which I then went and looked up in the library. So engage is number one. And number two, execute, which means find spaces where you can interact with the real world, right? So things of the classroom that you can find in the real world, or you can talk to somebody in the real world. So that's what industry interface is about, right? I think the corporate communications division does a fantastic job of bringing you a lot of these opportunities, whether it is through talks or interactions or visits or whatever else you find across the years and semesters, that there will be a lot of those opportunities. Take them, right? That be an enthusiastic participant in all of them. So those are the only things that you have to take. Actually, I'll simplify it even further, that there is only one guiding principle here, which is that bit about engage. Wherever I find an opportunity, let me engage. It could be with my peers, that is my and people in the college. It could be with faculty or subject matter experts or people from the industry, wherever I find that opportunity. And today, in a social and socially connected world, more than ever, those opportunities are abundant, right? Because you meet, you could interact with somebody online. You could ask somebody a question on LinkedIn or Quora or wherever else. Like, there are many opportunities to get these kind of insights. Right? It doesn't have to be as static. For example, during my time, if I had to ask a question like this, or if I had to speak to somebody from the industry, would have to wait for some kind of event and then maybe hope that we find that person for a moment to ourselves where we can go and ask a particular question we wanted to ask them. Right now, you can probably even reach out to it. And in a lot of cases, most people will respond. So use that as much as you can, right? Because the experience is a very key part of the learning. So there is a very famous 30-55-80 rule, which not very scientific. I usually don't like citing non-scientific figures, but roughly speaking, you get the idea that ideas and concepts you retain about 30% if you just listen to them, right? 55% if you are seeing them. So sort of like experiencing it with your own eyes rather than just sort of listening. And 80% if you are experiencing. So how do you turn seeing or listening into true experiencing? The previous guiding principle, engage. Try different ways, fail different ways. Roger Federer's countryman, Stan Wawrinka. Anybody's heard of him? Fairly famous tennis player, not as good as Federer, obviously, in terms of success and things like that, but he's also won a few Grand Slams, pretty popular player. Actually, I'm not gonna say directly. Since you all have got phones, Google Stan Wawrinka tattoo. So tattoo, yes. So Stan is S-T-A-N, Wawrinka is W-A-W-R-I-N-K-A, and tattoo. And tell me what you find. Don't worry, you'll not find any appropriate results. Just be. Yeah. So he's got a tattoo which is a text-based tattoo, right? Could you read out what the text says? Is it possible to read? Could you say it out in the mic?
Try again, fail better. Ever tried, ever failed, no matter.
So what does it say? Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. What was the second line?
Try again, fail again.
Try again, fail again, fail better. The last two words are the most critical ones. Because fail anybody can. It's not difficult to fail, right? But the point being, fail better, which means that you learn from the previous mistake, right? And that's what he kind of has followed through his whole career. And that is what we are looking at here in terms of that the whole messiness of the learning experience. It will be made even more confusing and messy by the interface with the real world. Because you will learn one thing in class, tomorrow you attend an industry lecture, they will tell you something else, and suddenly you are in conflict. That, oh, but I thought this worked this way, but now suddenly somebody else is telling me something else. So that is where you will have to reconcile these ideas in your mind, right? You will have to go back and think about them, that what you think is the right approach. And then nobody is there to tell you exactly what is the right or wrong approach. So you will have to just, mess around and find out. So to do that, these are, in my opinion, 4 key things that you ought to be doing. Right? Read as much as you can, and by which I mean not just the study material. That you will by default. You will have to, because that's the prescribed material. But expand beyond that. What are things that you can expand with? I'll come to that in a second. The second point I've already said, observe and ask questions, which is your engage. Right? So, and observe is very critical. That even with the smallest of things, observe what other people are saying and doing, or what kind of things do you see around you. You don't have to necessarily, let's say, agree with all of them, or necessarily have to like everything everybody does, but observe with a curious mind, right? And wherever is appropriate, ask questions about those things, right? And obviously the third point I've already mentioned. And point number 4 is something I highly emphasize on, that if you are not having fun, then you're not doing it. I come back to Roger Federer, that because he enjoys it so much is how he became successful. And a lot of people would say, that, oh no, but he has like a God-gifted backhand, or he has amazing athletic ability. Yes, he does. Some of it, he was lucky, but even then, without some level of enjoyment, or without some level of having fun, you can't make it through. Because by the end of it, you will be completely burned out, right? And that's what you do not want. So, how much time do we have? So, couple of last things before maybe we open it to questions. In terms of industry interface, right? A lot of people come and ask me about jobs. A lot of people come and ask me about career options, things like that. We've had that discussion. I'm guessing you will have that discussion with Preeti here and her team in Qualcomm as well. You will have that discussion with your peers also, with your parents, all sorts of things, right? You ask all sorts of things, which is, what are the jobs, what are the industries that are popular and so on, where are the job opportunities, etc. But what often people do not ask is, what do you exactly do at work? Now, it might not be a very exciting answer that people give, but it's very useful information to have, right? So if you meet somebody from the industry, while you can ask them like fancy high-end questions about what is the future of this industry, how will AI impact computing, or what do you think about the blockchain and stuff like that, I would suggest ask an even simpler question. What does your day-to-day look like? What do you do when you go to the workplace? What do you do? Right? Even if it is the most mundane thing, that I sit down and reply to a bunch of emails, or I write up a bunch of reports, or I update a bunch of spreadsheets. And all of those things are also part of the job. And why I ask this question, or why I'm encouraging you to go ahead and ask this question, is because that will give you an idea as to how your skills here that you're developing will be relevant to what you might be doing after this. Right? Because what you have to develop here is what we call transferable skills. So if you learn how to organize information, for example, so when your assignments and all that are given, what they're really testing is not necessarily just the subject knowledge. It's not necessarily just testing that can you make a financial statement out of all this information that has been given, or can you analyze a financial statement from some information that has been given. I'm also looking at how are you going about organizing that? How are you going about thinking about it? Because those will be skill sets that at the workplace they will look at, expect you to bring to the workplace. And that's why they will not necessarily be as particular about what specific things you studied in the subject or what particular marks you got. There might be some basic weightage given to that, but more importantly, I would look at skills. And if I'm recruiting somebody, I'd like to know how they go about it. In my team, every person that I've recruited in the research team that I had, I've given them an open-ended assignment. The assignment does not have a specific answer or anything. I do not give them anything beyond saying that, okay, this is some information that I'm seeking, just present it to me whatever way you'd like to present. And then we do the interview based on that. Why? Because what I'm trying to look at is how is that person approaching this problem. It's a problem where they need to collect information, then present information, organize. So, and those are the important skills in research, at least in my area. So those are the things that I'm looking for. And that's what I'm asking them, right? So you have to also think about those transferable skills, right? What are those two transferable skills that I could suggest you get to learn? People at work mostly do these two. On a daily basis, they have to make a lot of decisions, some small, some big. And the other important thing is you have to work with teams. Very few jobs are individual jobs. You're usually a part of a team, usually a part of a larger group, right? And you have to coordinate with those people in the group. Half of my work day goes in talking to other people of the group. I'm not doing necessarily work on my desk or my computer, right? What I'm doing is I'm going and talking to other people in other teams through whom I have to get some work done, right? So getting an update from them, or we are asking them a status on something and so on. So, and that is why you need to be a team person that way, right? So those are the two key skills that I would probably talk about. And essentially, to do that, you need to be able to collect a lot of information. Right? For making decisions also, you need information. And when working with teams also, you need to be able to deal with information, because there are different team members, everybody is giving you different ideas, different pointers. So that is why. And the challenge generally is how to prioritize that, right? Because usually there is sort of too much information in one sense, right? Which again, I think was mentioned at some point of time in your inaugural address as well. So this is where the information is, right? It could come in so many different forms, whether it is in the printed form, whether it is online, whether it is podcasts, whether it is YouTube videos. You choose whatever you want to spend your time on. That's perfectly fine, right? Because the overall knowledge is much bigger than just the study material. The study material, as I've drawn out there, is a part of the larger. And this is only part of the knowledge that you are expected to acquire. The rest is sort of out there, right? And there is honestly no limit to it, even though I put like a circle, right? So you choose whatever you would want to find out more about and go deeper in there, right? And do that by choosing whatever mode you want to. You want to watch like a bunch of YouTube videos on it, perfectly fine. You want to listen to like an entire playlist worth of podcasts on it, perfectly fine. You want to read like a couple of books on it, perfectly fine. Just find whatever is your preferred mode. I'm guessing not everybody, so that's why I'm not going to come in here and say, oh, everybody should read. Some people here may not like to read. That's fine, right? Because not everybody is wired the same way. Maybe you like to listen. So maybe consume content in audio form, right? But do consume content, right? So I'll probably skip this. What I wanted to quickly go through is, yeah. So what are things that you should learn about? These are the three key things. Learn about the language of it. So, terms, jargon, things like that. Not everybody likes them, but some of them are very commonly used. So we try to learn about that a little bit. Learn about stories and narratives. Storytelling is a very important part. Any job that you go to, any work that you do, ultimately all that you will have to be doing is selling stories. I work in the sports consulting industry. It's sports and little media and entertainment. We usually have to go to clients to tell them, come and associate with, let's say, Royal Challengers Bangalore. Put your name on their shirt, or on the Indian cricket team's jersey, or some team in the Kabaddi League, or things like that. Different kinds of sporting properties where we're telling them that you come and put your brand name in there. Right? So when a brand asks them, why should I be part of this? Right? You have to give them some kind of story, right? So, for example, this year we did some work with RCB and Mahindra. You may have seen ads of, Virat and all these people in pictures with Mahindra cars and so on. And one of the ideas that we gave to Mahindra was that they wanted to really focus on their electric vehicles, the green vehicles that they had. And the two dots that we kind of helped them connect was that RCB does that green jersey match every year, right? All of you are probably aware. And we said that's a great platform because they talk about the environment and things like that. And if you integrate your brand in there, it's a very easy way for them to push the message or connect the two ideas, right? So that's why you need to learn about the stories and narratives. And when I say stories and narratives, at B schools and most of the colleges and all that, there seems to be a bias towards just learning about those who are successful, right? But I would also suggest trying and finding out stories of failure as well. I know this has been a recurring theme, but it's important because you learn more from failure than from success, honestly, right? And that brings us to the last point, which is that connect the dots, etc. What is your name? Sneha. So Sneha, we are coming to the answer of your question in a very short while, in case that's been bugging you from the beginning. That it's not restricted oneself, who is it? But before that, I just need to take 5 minutes to do a quick game. So we're gonna do a game called 1 versus 100. So I need one person, a volunteer, who will battle against, well, it's not entirely 100 people here, but for the purpose of the game, it's fine. Who will battle with the 100? Who wants to take on this entire class alone? Anybody? Okay, come right out. What's your name? Arjun. So Arjun's gonna take on this class of 100. So Arjun, you can be here. So we are going to give you a set of questions. Each question has 3 answer options. You have to tell me which one do you think is the correct answer. So, and Arjun's also going to do the same. So all the best, Arjun. Hopefully you get to outlast the class. Now the game is very simple. For the majority of you, if I ask the question, I'll obviously ask that, okay, there is option A, option B, option C. How many people think option A? How many people think option B? How many people think option C? Right? As long as the majority is selecting the right answer, the class gets it right. Okay. But the pressure on Arjun is a little more. Because Arjun has to give me only one choice and he has to get it right. Just to give him a fair chance in this, we will allow maybe a couple of mistakes. Okay. So even if you get one wrong, you'll lose a life, but you stay in the game, taking on the rest of the 100. The class obviously cannot really be eliminated. So let's see how you guys do in this. Straightforward questions. So a terminology like this, right? In today's feverish financial markets, a company can go from in the black to in the red very quickly. So these are like typical jargon that you will see in newspapers and places like that. So what does in the red mean in this context? Does it mean A, make a loss? Does it mean B, change its logo? Or does it mean C, become communist? Okay. So Arjun will come to you. You have to lock the answer. So what you do is, you will give me the answer. Okay. So you want to think about it. So meanwhile, let the class do this. So, do you have an answer? Okay. We can't give you like a lot of time to think. I think it is already said we're like running out of time. Can you give me an answer? Okay, all right. So, among the class, how many people think it is option A? Okay. How many people think it's option B? Okay. And how many people think it is option C? Okay, all right. Now, the consensus is fairly clear. Most of you went with option A. Arjun went with option B. The correct answer is option A. In the red means making a loss. So in the black usually means making a profit. That's because, you know, when you write financial statements, usually the loss is highlighted with like a red ink. So that is right. So well done. The class wins this one, but Arjun was still in the game. Okay. So this was the headline from yesterday. Beyond Snack, a company that does organic snacks and stuff, raised $3.5 million. It's an Indian company, startup, in seed capital funding. Right? So what does the term seed capital mean here? Does it mean A, an agricultural loan, B, a public share offering, or C, money to start a business with? So we'll take the choices from you in a moment. Okay. Class, how many think it is option A? Okay. right? Option B. Going for option B. Option C. Okay, so the consensus seems to be with money to start a business is with what seed capital is correct. It's not the other stuff. Tough luck, Arjun, on that one. So you're down to your last mistake, unfortunately. But let's see if you can still stay in the game with the class. Okay. So when developing a global strategy, many companies develop a ballpark estimate. That's the term. So does this mean a rough estimate, or does this mean B, a prediction, or C, a blind guess? What does the term ballpark estimate mean here? Okay. So this time, to be fair to Arjun, we will take the class consensus. So how many think it is A? How many people in the class think it's A? Okay. How many people in the class think it's B? Okay. How many people in the class think it is C? Okay. All right. And Arjun, your choice. Okay. So Arjun saying A, and he is right. So for once, he's put one over the class. So it is rough estimate. Ballpark estimate is rough estimate. The term comes from, looking around in a stadium and saying, oh, there would be like 20,000 people. It's a rough eyeball kind of, right? So why have I put these questions? Just to get you into that mode that you've got to be thinking about these jargons and all that. That when you spot them, don't just move on saying that, oh, I don't get it, or maybe just guess that, oh, this might mean this, and just move on. Just be curious about it. Like, go ahead and see if you can. Okay. So top line growth was good, but the competition, the bottom line impact on the bottom line was negligible. So what does the term top line mean here? Does it mean A, cost, B, market share, or C, revenue? The financial term usually. So again, to be fair to Arjun, we'll go to the class first. How many think it is A? Oh, nobody thinks it's A. Okay. How many think it is B? Okay, some of you think it is B. And how many think it is C? Okay, we'll get Arjun's choice also. Okay, Arjun's going with C as well, and so did the class. So well done, both of you got it right for once. So finally, you have synced after 4 questions. Couple of more questions to go. So top line is the revenue, because usually the financial statement, the first line is there, right? Okay. Some narrative storytelling stuff. So this India-based airline started in 2013, derives its name from a Sanskrit word meaning limitless expanse. So is it, which of these airlines is it? Is it A, Indigo, B, Akasa, or C, Vistara? Okay. So who's anybody here who thinks A? No, nobody thinks A. Anybody who thinks B? Indigo is clearly no. Nobody thinks B. So clearly, I'm assuming option B. Yeah, pretty much consensus, right? Arjun also took the same choice, so you're still in the game. So yeah, it is Vistara, which means limitless expanse. Right? Akasa means sky. So and Akasa was started much more recently than 20-30 years. So those kind of stories, right? That stories behind companies, behind brands, behind people. Try and learn as much about those as you can. This book, based on what company? So is it A, Nykaa, B, Myntra, or C, Flipkart? The book is called Big Billion Startup. So, okay, I got your choice. How many people think it's A, Nykaa? Okay, some of you. How many people think it's B, Myntra? Okay. How many people think it is C? Yes, well done. So it is Flipkart. A lot of clues out there, but again, that what this incidentally, this is a very fun book in terms of understanding not just what are the factors of success early on behind Flipkart, but also the conflicts and tensions behind. So it's a great book. I would recommend it. Arjun getting it right as well. So which brings us to the end of that game. My point about the game was so round of applause for Arjun, stuck in the game after getting 9, and he pretty much stayed up. They're right till the end. So well done, Arjun. Thank you for stepping up. And that's my point that, you know, alone I would not be able to know everything. I don't. So what do I rely on? I rely on constantly leaning on other people, learning from other people, asking them, referencing them all the time. And that's what industry interface is about. Right? That's why you are doing it. And as I said at the beginning, I've said this word quite a few times, that always when you see something interesting, be curious, not judgmental. Approach it with an open mind, learn a little bit more about it. And most importantly, the first part, that be curious. It should make you curious, right? If I'm eating 4700 BC popcorn, I'm curious, why is it called 4700 BC? I'm not going to give you the answer, please find out. Right? And to answer your question, Sneha's question, the original quote was from, so Rashmi's book actually is a play on the Steve Jobs. I think she references Steve Jobs somewhere in the book, but he made this point about saying, you know, at college, Steve Jobs was not somebody who was taking straight kind of courses, right? He took all sorts of courses. He took like a handwriting course and things like that. So he went to a liberal arts college and he learned a lot of different things. But you know him today as, you know, somebody who's a tech titan, built up one of the most valuable tech companies in the world and one of the most successful consumer products companies in the world. And he, at multiple times, has claimed that some of the knowledge that he got back there has helped him understand design, user interface, and things like that, which has helped inform how Apple made some of its products and which has made those products successful. So that's what he meant by saying that you can connect the dots only going forward. Because you keep picking up these dots along the way, keep picking up these random information and things like that. And in the future is where you suddenly see that, oh, there is a connection which I can use or which can be useful, right? And that's where success or some kind of unusual success comes from. That's the one lesson that I'd like you guys to take from this session. So I think we are almost out of time, but we'll just quickly, it's 1:30. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions, anything you want to ask? Like it says, like a read thing, do you have a question? No. Just stay right there. Anybody else? No? No questions? Okay. If not, then just those two things, that please engage as much as you can in whatever way with your peers, with your faculty outside of the classroom. And number two, the point about curiosity, that approach everything with a level of curiosity that will bring that interest and passion and excitement, which keeps Federer going. So if it's good for Federer, why not for us, right? Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your attention and your time. And thank you very much.
On behalf of BMS College of Commerce and Management, I would like to thank Professor Tariq sir for such an entertaining and engaging session. So big round of applause for Tariq sir. I would also like to thank our pillar of support, Dr. Pankaj Chaudhary sir, Head of Corporate Communication Department, Dr. P.P. Stanley ma'am, faculty members and students. Thank you.
We'll hopefully see some of you in class who are doing like open electives and stuff. All the best.